So,
Okay.
first thing, let's introduce everybody.
Hi, I'm Ismail.
I'm Andy.
Danielle.
I'm DeAndre.
Ibrahim.
I'm Saidu. What other company? Oh, some people from Las Vegas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, try to introduce. Yeah, Turkey? That's Kiki there. Hi, Kiki.
Because I have my nightgown on.
Okay. All right. Let's begin.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Prince, as you all know, and I'm going to give you a speech on a how-to speech. So, quick question: how many of you guys know how to play chess, or better question? How many of you guys know how to play checkers, a form of checkers? Anybody? Checkers?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. But do any of you guys know how to play chess? No. A few. It's a very, very common thing. Most people know how to play checkers, but they don't know how to play chess. A few things behind it. Checkers has been around for about 4,000 years. It's actually the oldest board game. Chess has been around about 1,500 years. So it's a big difference. However, I asked most of my friends why they don't play chess, and some of them say that they don't have the time, too many pieces, too many movements, too complicated. They don't have it because it's time consuming. Well, if this sounds familiar, I'm going to show you guys how to play chess today. Show you how the piece moves, the objective of the game, and just so you'll be able to play on your own time, because a very famous proverb is that, you know, a game of chess is like a game of life. So every piece has its own different story, and every movement has its own different story. So each game is kind of different. You never play two games that are very, very similar. That's why the game has been very, very famous. So before I teach you guys, show you the moves, let me give you a brief history on chess. Chess has been around since about 600 AD. I say actually about 550, and they said that it was invented by the Indians in India, and perhaps even China had a form of the game as well. But it was spread through the Persian Empire by the Arabs, then eventually spread to southern Europe. And the modern game we play now is European style. It's European style, and the first competition was held in about 1851 in England. So, like I said, it's been around, and it's a very competitive game. However, you can play by yourself. It used to be where you can take 2 hours to make a move. Now they have places where there's time for 1 minute, 30 seconds to make a move. All right. So that's the brief history on that. But let's get to the basics. The board is a checkerboard, and it's alphanumeric. So that means you have 16 pieces. You have 8 pawns, and then you have 8 pieces back here. So here you have the 2 rooks, you have 2 knights, 2 bishops, you have a queen, and then you have a king. So how the board is labeled. This square here would be A, is also 1. Alright? B1, C1, D1, E, F, G, H. So this is A1, A2, A3, A4, A5, A6, A7, A8. Same way all the way down. Alright? So if I was to move this piece, this pawn here, from this square to this square, it would be from A2 to A3. And vice versa, this individual decided to move this piece to this piece because white always moves first. And then you alternate moves after that. Alright, so this one was to move this from head to head, it would be from, what is that, A7 to A6. Right? That would be their move. So this is how you coordinate the movements, right? Or who went and who the opponent went. So how do the pieces move? Well, the pawns move one square at a time, and they only move vertical. Okay. Actually, before I tell you the movements, let me tell you the objective of the game. The objective of the game is to capture the king so that the king cannot make any movements. Okay. And you might have heard the term checkmate. When you checkmate the individual, which is the objective of the game, you want to trap the king so that he cannot move. All right. So getting back to the movements, the pawn, it only moves one square at a time vertically. Okay. He can capture if there's another piece here, any other piece, he can only capture going diagonal this way. That's the only time that the pawn can capture. Now, when I say capture, you don't necessarily have to. So you are not required to capture. Okay, you can skip it if you would like, but that is the only time the pawn can capture. All right. So moving on from the pawn, you have the rook. Okay, the rook moves vertically and horizontally any amount of squares, as long as it's uninterrupted. So it can go this way, any amount of squares, as long as it's uninterrupted. If the opponent piece is within these squares, then he can capture it. That makes sense? Okay. That is the rook. Then I'm going to skip the knight for a second. We're going to go to the bishop. The bishop moves diagonally, okay? And it can go in any amount of squares diagonally, like this, okay? That is, you have one in the dark square, you have one in the light square. You have the queen. The queen is considered the most powerful piece on the board because she can move in any direction, any amount of squares, if it's uninterrupted, if there's no other piece blocking this movement. Okay, so let's say the queen was here. She can move this way, this way, this way, any way, any amount of spaces. The king. The king is the one you have to protect, because if your king becomes captured, the game is over. He moves very, very slow, and he moves one square at a time. He moves the same movements as the queen. However, he does it very slow, one square at a time. So it's very important to keep the king behind other pieces so that you protect him. Okay. Now let's go back to the knight. This is perhaps the most confusing piece as far as when it comes to movements. Okay, because it moves as first a rook and then as a bishop. What do I mean by that? The first step, let's say this knight is here. The first step that the knight takes, it has to be the movement of a rook. Remember, the rook moves any distance vertically and horizontally this way. So the first step that the knight takes has to be one square as a rook. That means it has to go either this way once, this way once, this way once, or this way once. Now after it makes that first initial move, the next move it makes, this is all one movement, by the way, it has to be that of a bishop. So it has to be what? Diagonal. So it has to be either from this square, it has to be this way, okay, or it has to be this way, because it came from here. So it will be this way, because it'll make one as a rook, that way, and then this way, like that. But that's very confusing. Or another way to describe it, it moves in L's. So it'll be 3-2, or it'll be 2-3. It moves in L's. Okay. So those are the movements of the pieces. Now, chess has 5 special rules that I need to address. So pay very, very special attention to this. Okay. The 5 special rules. The pawn, I told you, could take only one step vertically correct. However, on the first initial move, when you move the pawns, you can decide to take 2 squares instead of 1. And you can do it with all of them. You don't have to, you're not required to, however, but you can. So you can take 2. Okay. That is called 2 square pawn move, or double advancement by the pawn. Okay. That's one. Another one is called en passant capture. Okay. What does that mean? En passant capture. Before we had the 2 square movements, if you cannot avoid this pawn here, because you couldn't go to before the two square movement. So you had to you had to pretty much get captured by a pawn. Well, en passant rule is if I decide to jump this square to avoid capture, the opponent will capture this pawn as if it didn't jump 2 squares, you see. So I would attempt to avoid this pawn by jumping 2 squares. However, he can capture me and take the square that I was supposed to go, as if en passant capture did not exist. Does that make sense? All right. So that's the second rule. And then you have castling. Castling is another concept that gets most people. castling, you do castling to avoid capture or to protect the king. And you castle using the rooks and the king. Okay, so you always move the king 2 squares to the right or 2 squares to the left. The shorter distance, this would be considered short castling. Since you have a long distance on this side of the playing field, it's long castling. So the king will go 1, 2 here, and then the rook will come on the opposite side. This way, you're protecting the king. And if you to do the short cast on this side, the king will move 2 squares there, and the rook will come to protect the king. Now, when can you not castle? You cannot castle if you have moved either the rook or the king that you intend to castle with prior to trying to castle. So if you have moved any one of those pieces, you can no longer castle. If you move this rook, you cannot castle with this rook. However, you can castle with this rook. And also, you cannot attempt to castle if it's going to put you in danger. For instance, right now, I am in check. I am in danger because this square, this bishop here can capture this square, so I have to take my king out of the capture. I cannot bring my king here or try to castle this way because I'm going across this check and this check. So you cannot try to castle out to get out of danger, and you cannot castle to put yourself in danger. That's the only 3 things. If you move any one piece, you cannot castle. You cannot castle out of danger. You cannot castle to put yourself in danger. So remember those. Another thing to remember is stalemate, and also you have you cannot win if you have just the king and you have just the only other piece you can win with is if you have a king and a rook. You cannot win with a king and a knight or a king and a bishop. Those are the other rules as well. Okay. So the game of chess is fun. It's good for everybody to enjoy. However, just know that you don't want to jump in too early. Don't bring your queen out too early. And one thing to remember, old proverb, is that a surprise opponent is a half defeated opponent. So don't bring your queen out too early, and try to surprise your opponents and enjoy the game. It's a very, very fun game. All right, and you can learn a lot about your opponent. So play, enjoy the game, and find out a lot about yourself. All right, thank you.
All right.